Welcome to another edition of What's Your Take, the weekly news program that looks at all the major big stories of the previous week and analyzes them for the benefit of all well-meaning Nigerians and all Nigerians from all walks of life. Well, it's been another hectic week. As we know, we're in high political season, and this is the time where any and everybody has something to do with the political space. So we'll start this morning a bit on a lighter note. One of the catchphrases in Nigerian lexicon today, we heard this story about a wife who called her husband on the way home and said, "Honey, kindly buy me some naira on the way home." I'm sure you are used to the fact that wives call husbands to buy loaves of bread, buy recharge cards, buy some milk, but never before have you heard anybody asking you to buy some naira. But that's where we are in Nigeria today. We're buying naira. The very money that we put in the bank, we have to buy it to get it back out in our pockets, which is not a very good state of affairs, but that's where we find ourselves even this morning. And that brings me to President Buhari's promise last week, Monday, right here on the show. We talked about the fact that President Buhari promised in 7 days to resolve the crisis. Here we are 7 days later, and we still have no money. There's still queues in all the ATMs. My newscaster is with us here this morning, Yetunde Afolabi. Yetunde, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Dayo. I'm very well, thank you.
Very, very good. Do you remember President Buhari's promise last week? You were the one who read it to us and said he promised that 7 days he would resolve the issue. Do you remember that promise?
Of course I do.
Very good. And is it resolved? Did you still see queues at the ATMs, or is it that things have improved now? Do people have money in their pockets?
As of this morning, no.
As of this morning, we're all still cashless.
Yes, we are.
Very good. All right. Anyway, we will now go to Yetunde to start telling us some of the stories we're going to look at and invite our guests to analyze those stories with us so that we know what Nigeria at large is thinking about what's going on here. So over to you, Yetunde.
Ban on old naira notes. Supreme Court halts February 10 deadline. Council of State asked the Central Bank of Nigeria to print more new naira notes or recirculate old ones. CBN, NSPMC are sure of capacity to print naira notes. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court of Nigeria entered an interim order against the Central Bank of Nigeria, banning the bank from going ahead with its February 10 deadline for the end of use of the old naira notes. The injunction was issued based on a lawsuit filed by the governors of Kaduna, Kogi, and Zamfara states as a result of the hardship being experienced by the citizens of their respective states from the unavailability of the new notes. The order will subsist until February 15, at which time the court will revisit the matter. Meanwhile, at a meeting held in Abuja on Friday, the Council of State expressed support for the Naira redesign policy of the CBN, but asked Governor Godwin Emefiele to make new Naira notes available or recirculate old ones to ease the suffering of Nigerians. In a related matter, the Supreme Court has instructed Nigerians to stop attacking judgments. In the wake of recent judgments by the Apex Court, in which aspirants for senatorial seats in Akwa Ibom and Yobe states who did not participate in their party primaries were declared to be the bona fide candidates of their parties for the elections, leading to public outcry and criticism of the court. The Supreme Court has asked Nigerians to stop maligning the revered institution. The court went on to say that if political parties fail to organize themselves well by managing their internal wrangling maturely and choose to take themselves before the court, the judges are duty-bound to adjudicate in accordance with the provisions of the law and not the dictates of any individual. Some legal experts, however, are of the opinion that the Supreme Court, being one of the institutions of democracy, and judgments are subject to public scrutiny and should therefore not seek to gag the public in criticizing its decisions. Our next big story is about measures Lagos State is putting in place to give succor to its most vulnerable residents experiencing hardship from fuel and naira shortages. Worried by the challenge some Lagosians, especially the vulnerable and less privileged, are facing currently, as a result of naira and fuel scarcity in the country. Governor Sanwo-Olu stated that the state government will roll out food packs and health relief packages beginning Monday the 13th of February. The governor also slashed to 50% the fare on state-owned buses, ferries, lag ride, and other public transport, extending this discount indefinitely from the initial period of 1 week. Government shuts all Nigerian universities, orders students to go home from February 22nd to March 14th. Citing security concerns, the federal government shut all universities across the country and ordered students to go home for the period. Hoodlums unleash attacks on Labour Party campaign in Lagos. Hoodlums attacked the presidential campaign rally of the Labour Party held in Lagos on Saturday, leading to 1 death and numerous persons injured. The Labour Party presidential candidate, Peter Obi, was also accused of gifting 2 billion naira to churches through the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN.
For giving us the big stories of the past week. And before we go on break, I just want to bring up the fact that the earthquake in Turkey, we need to commiserate with the people of Turkey and the people of Syria who have suffered from the effects of a devastating earthquake. In this part of the world, we're relatively fortunate that we don't experience such things. But once upon a time, I lived in the earthquake belt, and I've actually been involved in at least 2 major earthquakes, and I tell you, there's nothing scarier. The ground shakes, the buildings sway, and it's as if the entire world is going to come screeching to a halt. There's nothing like it, and the effects can be devastating. So our hearts go out to the people of Turkey and Syria, and we offer our condolences and sympathies to the people of those countries. Back home here, there's also an incident at Chrisland School in Okwebi, Ikeja, that's also quite sad and tragic, in which a 12-year-old student lost her life under questionable circumstances last week at a sporting event that the school held at an outside stadium. Investigations are still underway as to what may have been responsible for the child losing her life, but we offer our condolences to the family, and we pray that the government does this investigation and puts to bed whatever may have been responsible for that poor child's untimely death. All right, that's it. We shall take a break now, and when we come back, my guests will be joining me to take a look at these stories, take a deep dive into these stories, and discuss them in depth. Don't go away. Joining me to give us her take on the big stories of last week is Simisola Adeyemi, an entrepreneur who runs a catering outfit in the Surulere area of Lagos. Welcome to the show, Simisola.
Thank you, sir. Good to be here. Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Also with us in the studio today to give his take on the big stories that made the headlines last week is Demola Afolabi, an entrepreneur and company director in Ikeja, Lagos. Thank you for joining us this morning, Demola.
Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Let's start with you, Simisola. What's your take on this whole Naira redesign policy? This whole thing that has seen us queuing in front of ATMs and struggling to get our own money out of the banks that we worked hard to earn and we have put away for safekeeping, and now we can't access it. How do you see this whole thing?
Well, it's a bit sad. Great idea, wrong timing, wrong strategy. It's very, very unplanned, and it's taking a very great toll on the citizens. It's been chaotic. There was an issue, like I cook, so I went to the market sometimes 2 weeks ago, and the whole of the goat's meat section shut down because they didn't want to take the old Naira note. There was no sensitization. People are. It's chaotic, that's just it. It's a very wrong timing and very unplanned. It's a good idea. I'm a cashless fan. I believe in cashless, but it's just a very, very terrible time to take up such important thing.
What do you think is wrong with the timing? Is it because elections are coming, or are you trying to say that maybe the notice wasn't long enough?
Well, short notice, number one. Then I believe there's a little bit political, political undertone. Yes. But you shouldn't, because of your political undertone, affect the lives of over 200 million Nigerians. It's so unfair. People are buying nairas. They are buying their money. They are buying
their own money that they
are buying their money that they have. It's unfair. No. But I'm a cashless fan. Don't forget that. I believe in cashless policy. I love the fact that we are going to have less cash now, but wrong timing, horrible strategy.
Bad implementation.
Exactly.
Demola, in terms of the political undertones that Simi has mentioned, do you really believe there's political calculations behind this Naira redesign policy, or is it just simply all about moving with the times and trying to adapt to technology, take advantage of technology to make our lives less complicated?
Absolutely. There is a very heavy political undertone. And the reason why I say so is because of the timing of the
implementation.
The implementation one, the fact that we have to return all old Naira notes on a date before the elections. I mean, I have been in other countries where either a currency has been introduced or changed. And I'll give an example. I was in England when the pound note was changed, and the £1 note we used to spend was changed into a coin. And then I think the £20 note was changed, and then the £50 note was introduced. But at no time was there any date by which, if you did not return your money to the bank, it will not cease to be legal tender. I believe till today, there's no time limit. I mean, if you turn up at the Bank of England, which is the central bank, you go to a desk, if you find the old Naira note in your loft or wherever, they'll change it for you and give you the equivalent.
So are you saying that the fact that they put a time limit on it in Nigeria is for political considerations?
There's no doubt in my mind that is for political considerations. Whilst, I mean, they may claim that they're trying to mop up the Naira, prevent money laundering, etc., etc. I mean, if there are political actors or members of the political class or politicians who they believe are running afoul of the money laundering laws, or that they want to use money to influence the elections, then they need to intervene with those persons in other ways that does not affect the ability of citizens to have access to their money, especially in a country like Nigeria, where we have millions of people who are not even literate. They don't understand what is going on. All they know is that they've turned up at their bank, they've demanded their money,
and they can't get it.
I mean, they don't. I mean, how do you go about explaining to them that the bank has not collapsed?
Yes, indeed.
You know, because that is what is going through their own minds. They never mind what the goodness in the policy is, which I actually support, but it's just the way it was implemented. I mean, the central bank governor was saying that, at one point, a paper, it was published in the paper that he said there was not enough materials. There was a quick reporter from central bank and from the governor himself. But if that is the case, we believe that the governor, but where is the Naira?
Yes, I hear you. And it's interesting that you would bring that up, because the Council of State met on Friday, and they said that they ordered the recirculation of the old notes and printing of new notes, but so far we haven't seen anything, and we are still stuck in the same rut.
Again, it shouldn't be last Friday that the Council of State will be saying print Naira notes. I mean, they knew they wanted to change the notes. So they should have been printing for weeks on end before the change.
But you know, I think I like the idea. If it's going to stop book buying, then we have to bear the sacrifice. We have to bear it. We have to just bear it. If it's for the good of the nation, nothing comes easy.
Well, there's nothing without any pain, but I want to use that to discuss another aspect of the Supreme Court, who has said that Nigerians should stop attacking its judges, its judgments, that what is happening now is that because some of the things they have said lately are deemed to be controversial.
Yes.
Like there have been 2 senatorial candidacies that they have ruled what seems to be unorthodox.
Yes.
And of course, they are intervening in the issue of the Naira redesign policy. A lot of people have been criticizing the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court came out yesterday and said, hey, it is our duty when a matter is brought before us to adjudicate it according to the law. Now, let me ask you, Simi, do you think that in the issues that affect our daily lives, that the Supreme Court should be the one kind of fashioning out the way we live, as opposed to, in democracy, it's the voter who holds the ultimate power.
Yes.
And they say the court is the last hope of the common man. But when the court begins to be the first hope, as opposed to the last hope, how does that affect our own actual democratic power of the ballot?
Well, it's the Nigerian factor. It's the Nigerian factor. Whatever the Supreme Court comes out with is what we should, bear, because the judges and the politicians, they are at par. They work, I wouldn't say they work hand in hand, but they are friends. So in most cases, I think the outcome of their conclusions, it will always favor them. It will always, it will not be in favor of the common man. That's what I've deduced.
Demola, do you think there's corruption in the judiciary?
Well, some of their judgments makes it appear as if all is not well within the Supreme Court. I don't want to, say more than that, but also I know that a central bank is supposed to be independent. A central bank is supposed to be independent in policy making and so many other things.
So you don't think the Supreme Court had the jurisdiction to intervene in the matter like it did last week?
Exactly. That is what a school of thought amongst the lawyers is saying, that the central bank does not have the jurisdiction.
The Supreme Court does not have the jurisdiction.
The Supreme Court does not have the jurisdiction to intervene in
CBN matters.
In CBN matters. And the example he gave was quite clear, which I thought, oh, wow. He said, if the central bank decides to increase the interest rates, for instance,
can you go to the court
and if you governors
to stop it,
put themselves together and head to the Supreme Court to say that, look, this high interest rate is affecting businesses or my people in my state, and that the Supreme Court should stop it?
So you think this was a judicial overreach? Even though you're not a lawyer and I'm not a lawyer, the jury is still out on that.
Yes, I think so. But
you make a compelling argument that it seems to be that the judiciary is stepping into areas where...
Okay, so who is supposed to check the central bank?
Well, the first problem that the Central Bank of Nigeria has and has had for probably generations is that the governor of the central bank is picked from amongst commercial bankers.
Yeah.
But it's answerable only to the president.
Yes, I mean, in more developed countries where they don't have the kind of problems, they have their own problems as well.
Yes.
They don't have the kind of problems that we have. Central bank governors are most of the time economists, not bankers.
And there's a difference in terms of skill set.
Yes, and there's a skill set an understanding of the environment,
Yes.
Okay.
the economic, monetary policy, and all the rest. They are not commercial bankers who have interests. Who tend to have interests.
Let's talk about another government entity that's playing a role in this whole fuel scarcity and petrol scarcity issue. We talked about the Supreme Court, the role it has played. Well, the Lagos State government last week rolled out a set of palliatives for the most vulnerable and less privileged people in Lagos by slashing transportation costs by 50% on government-owned buses, ferries, the lag ride taxi system. In addition, the governor has also promised that effective Monday, the 13th, there will be food banks that will supply food to the needy, and there'll also be health relief packages. Is this an example of a responsive government that's being sensitive to the needs of the people? Because what I hear you saying, Simisola, earlier is that the implementation of the timing and the implementation of the Naira redesign policy was not well thought through in terms of the impact it would have on the masses. Yes. So now we see a government taking proactive steps to mitigate the hardship caused by this Naira redesign policy. Do you have kudos for the Lagos State government, or do you have knocks?
Honestly, give it to Lagos State. They are very proactive. I don't know who gives them this, advice, but they are always proactive. When it comes to, I remember festive seasons, they always do slash on the transportation. They do relief packages and all. Lagos State has always done that, and I believe this doesn't have any political undertone, like they want people to vote for them. No,
they just
Lagos
really care.
Lagos State really cares. People probably, I don't know if foundations have a hand in it, but they are always trying to reach out to the masses to curb the hardship when things like this rises and everything. Lagos State is always, I'm not defending them, but I believe in charity and reaching out to people in need in times of difficulty, and Lagos State has done a good one, and I think other states should emulate. But if it has a political undertone, it's going to end it's going to end in the gallows, because Lagosians, people have made up their minds.
Okay. All right, so Lagos State blazing a trail that others should follow. Demola, let's talk about this Labour Party rally that happened in Lagos over the weekend. And in the process of that rally happening, actually before the rally came, the federal government had announced that all universities should shut down from, I think it's February 22nd, and close till after the election, citing security concerns. The security concerns are probably on the basis of the fact that the elections are coming. Does this mean they're worrying about violence and possible mayhem? Because that ties into the next issue I wanted to talk about, that there was a Labour Party rally in Lagos over the weekend where hoodlums hijacked it and unleashed mayhem on the campaigners.
Yes.
In fact, one person was allegedly killed, several others were injured. The rally was disrupted completely. So this issue of violence, that the government could be that concerned to shut all the universities and tell all the students to go home, and then we have a very practical example happening right here in Lagos over the weekend. Does that mean that violence is a real and present threat in the upcoming elections, despite all the peace pacts signed by the contestants?
Yes, clearly so, because as you said, a Labour Party rally, thugs appeared from nowhere with guns and machetes, and the number of persons were injured, and allegedly one died.
Do we have any idea where these people came from, who sponsored them? Do we know? What are the police saying? Do we know?
Well, we haven't heard anything much yet from the side of the police, but what we know is that a number of persons were attacked with machetes, and were, injuries were inflicted upon them, and interestingly, at a time when this cashless policy implementation and the currency thing has gone wrong or been poorly implemented, and our hospital system wouldn't treat you if you do not have cash to pay. I mean, in the last week or so, I've heard of 2 deaths, one is close to somebody I know.
Because they didn't have cash to pay at the
Yeah,
hospital.
yes, because they didn't have cash to pay at the hospital. One was in Kaduna, where a man took his pregnant wife to the hospital, was running around for cash. The hospitals refused to commence treatment, and the lady, sadly and unfortunately, died. And one, I'm told, was at a hospital in Lagos, a general hospital, which is Lagos State controlled, and where someone was brought in, and the hospital were insisting on payment in cash.
But why can't they take transfers?
The guy said
Why
they
can't
didn't
they
have
take
cash.
transfers?
They were willing to
Why-
pay by transfer.
Why can't they take?
And the guys kept
Why?
insisting,
Why can't they take transfers?
insisting on cash, and 3 hours later, the guy that was brought in died.
But
Okay.
the government has already mandated that petrol stations and other retail outlets cannot refuse to take transfers. So why a hospital, which whether private or government owned, would
so it goes
refuse?
back. I've seen this happening even before this cashless policy, where hospitals, people will be rushed in, cardiac arrest, whatever it is, and the hospital will keep on saying that, look, pay before service.
Take
And
transfers.
I think the Lagos state government, through its Ministry of Health, and similarly other state governments, need to step in here, because I understand that doctors have what you call Hippocratic oath,
that
where
they must do
they
no harm.
must
Yes, they
save
must
lives.
attend to
So,
people, yes.
I mean, in this day and age of technology, where, I mean, if someone walks into a hospital, needs treatment, get the IDs of those who brought him in and the patient. If you need to get their,
Exactly.
whatever IDs you need
And-
to get off them, so that you can ensure that when the patient has been treated, monies that, I mean, the cost of the treatment can still be retrieved.
Yes, of course.
Once the persons that brought them in and the patient have been identified,
Yes.
the monies can be retrieved. We cannot claim to be a giant of Africa and claim to be among the Committee of Nations, and people are dropping dead in hospitals,
hospitals.
because they don't have cash to pay.
pay.
I mean, it is
Absolutely.
a disgrace.
Indeed, yes. Simisola, are you worried about violence in the upcoming elections?
I am extremely bothered because 2 weeks ago there was a little shootout in my area in Surulere. Like there was gun battle. We watch it on Twitter.
yes,
There were
remember, yes.
shotguns.
Yes.
You know. So this is election isn't here, and they're already
Things like that
fighting.
are happening.
And the party leadership should caution their people. Caution them. Call them to order.
There was a case.
Call them to order. Both online, the online warriors and the physical warriors. Call both of them to order.
There was a case in Etiosa, which is gone viral now, where Ibale and his cabinet were discussing about how everybody within their community was going to vote for one party.
He threatened them and said
And
anybody who
was
wasn't going
issuing
to vote,
threats.
they will be kicked out of the community.
Yes, was issuing threats that they were going to frustrate their businesses, kick them out of the community, and all sorts of things. These were the things that Mr. President Buhari was talking about that he didn't want to happen. So I think the police needs to get onto these issues and make sure that nobody is able to threaten anyone. And
But you know, the Labour Party started this problem. They started this problem from online. They started this problem bullying people. Once you don't support their candidate, they're going to come for you.
Well, I
they
think-
bullied people, and now it's showing physically. It's
Well,
left online.
Well, I think by and large that all the parties have played a role one way or another. I know that some are more active online, some are more active physically on the terra firma.
on the streets.
All the political parties need to show some restraint. Now, I think it's fair to say that President Buhari is doing everything he can to ensure free and fair elections. But that aspect, I think that free and fair elections, from his perspective, looks more at the process, the beavers, the fact that there's no cash to buy votes and
Yes,
things like that.
yes.
But the security aspect seems to need a little bit
more attention.
work. Thank you, Nigeria. It's 12 days to the election from today. That's less than 2 weeks. So we believe that in the coming days there'll be a lot more political activity. We ask that you all be safe, Those who don't have their PVCs, there's nothing you can really do now since INEC has closed that. But those who have their PVCs, make sure you go out there and make your voice be heard. Thank you for joining us on this episode of What's Your Take. I thank our in-studio guests, our newsreader, our producer, and of course, TV360. We look forward to seeing you again next time.